I used to be a shadow in my own life, the daughter of a legend, the wife of a CEO. But in just one night, I lost my husband, my title, and found myself. I'm Clara Bennett, the woman who was betrayed in front of a ballroom full of people at the anniversary of the company my father built. But don't pity me. This isn't the story of someone who crumbled. It's the journey of someone who came back, stronger, sharper, and more dangerous than anyone ever imagined. Before I share my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've ever come back from something you thought would break you. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as Alex raised his glass to the crowded ballroom. 20 years of archtech. 10 years of marriage. I'd worn the sapphire dress he'd given me for our 5th anniversary, thinking tonight would be about us. To innovation, to progress, and to the future. My husband's voice echoed through the Seattle Convention Center. The fog outside pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the world beyond disappear. I should have seen it coming when Maya Tran stood beside him, her hand resting too familiarly on his arm. She wore red. Of course she did. The head of strategy always knew how to make a statement. And, speaking of the future, Alex continued, his eyes never finding mine in the crowd, I have an announcement that will reshape archtech's trajectory. My stomach dropped. This wasn't in the speech we'd rehearsed. Change requires courage. It requires letting go of the past. He turned to Maya, and the smile he gave her was one I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Maya and I have been working on a restructuring plan that will position archtech for a younger, more dynamic future. The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. I stood frozen as Maya lifted her left hand, a diamond catching the light. We're also celebrating a more personal partnership tonight, she said, her voice carrying perfectly. Alex proposed last week. We wanted to share our joy with the archtech family. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound cut through the stunned silence, and suddenly every eye, every camera, turned to me. Clara Bennett, the founder's daughter, the CEO's wife, no, the CEO's soon-to-be ex-wife, standing in a spreading puddle of champagne and broken glass. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply looked at Alex, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. Then I turned and walked out, my heels clicking steadily despite the tremor in my chest. Behind me, I heard Maya's voice, sweet with false concern. Oh dear, I hope she's all right. This must be such a shock. Alex tried to tell her gently, but she's been so distant lately. The private elevator recognized my biometrics without question. Most people didn't know there was a penthouse above the archtech building's official top floor. Even Alex had never asked about the extra button that appeared only for me. My hands shook as I entered the code to Father's vault. 4/15/73, his birthday. The steel door opened with a soft hiss, revealing the office he'd kept secret even from his closest advisors. Everything remained exactly as he'd left it 12 years ago, the day his heart gave out at his desk downstairs. I pulled out the leather portfolio marked for Clara, when the time comes. Inside, documents detailed the corporate structure I'd never fully understood. Trust funds, shell companies, anonymous holdings. My father had been paranoid, or so I'd thought. Now, scanning through incorporation documents and proxy statements, I realized he'd been prescient. I owned 78% of archtech through a web of holdings so complex even our CFO didn't know they existed. But it was the letter at the bottom that made me sink into his old chair. My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're facing something that's forced you to open this vault. I pray it's not what I fear. I've been watching Alex. He's charming, ambitious, and you love him. I see that. But there are discrepancies in his background, connections that trouble me. I hired investigators, but my heart gave out before I could act on what they found. I've structured your inheritance to be invisible until you choose to reveal it. The world will think you weak, a figurehead trading on your father's name. Let them. Silence is not weakness, my dear. It's the pause before the storm. Stay quiet until they think you're at your weakest. That's when you'll be strongest. All my love, Dad. My phone buzzed. 17 missed calls from Alex. 43 text messages. The last one made me laugh, dark and bitter. Clara, don't be dramatic. We need to discuss this like adults. I opened my laptop and logged into the monitoring system Father had built into Archtech's infrastructure. The Tholos Protocol, named after the circular temples of ancient Greece. Complete access to every email, every file, every security camera in the building. I'd never used it before. I'd trusted my husband. Now I typed in his name and watched 5 years of deception unfold on my screen. Maxwell Ward answered on the second ring, despite it being past midnight. Father's old CFO had retired to Bainbridge Island 5 years ago, pushed out by Alex's modernization. Clara? His voice was instantly alert. I saw the news. Are you safe? I'm in the vault, I said simply. Silence. Then, thank God, I've been waiting for this call for 5 years. Within an hour, Maxwell sat across from me, silver hair slightly mussed, studying the papers I'd found. His expression grew darker with each page. Your father suspected Alex was planted, he said finally. These connections to Zhao Industries. Maya Tran is Lei Chao's niece. Did you know that? I shook my head. Zhao Industries was our biggest competitor in sustainable construction tech. They'd been trying to acquire Archtech for years. The old guard is still loyal, Maxwell continued. Sarah from legal, James from engineering, Dr. Chen from research. Alex pushed us all out, but we've been waiting. Your father made sure we'd be ready when you were. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's number. She lived in Paris now, as far from Seattle and memories of Dad as she could get. Clara, darling, her voice was strained. I just saw the news. That horrible woman and in public. Are you all right? Did you know? I asked quietly. About the shares, the protocol, any of it? A long pause. Your father told me everything. I helped him design it, actually. The invisible architecture, he called it. A company within a company. Power behind power. I closed my eyes. Even my mother had kept secrets. Listen to me, she continued. Margaret Haywood is still on the board. She was my best friend before I left. Alex has been trying to turn her, but she's been playing along to gather information. Trust her. And Clara? Don't let them see you cry. Not yet. After we hung up, I turned back to the Tholos Protocol. Email after email showed Alex and Maya's relationship stretching back 3 years. Business trips that were anything but. Strategy sessions in hotel rooms. And worse, technical specifications for our breakthrough solar panel design forwarded to an encrypted address that traced back to Zhao Industries. They weren't just stealing my husband. They were stealing my father's legacy. Maxwell watched me process it all. What do you need? Everything, I said. Every document, every witness, every piece of evidence, and I need it by Sunday. He smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him in years. The quarterly board meeting. They'll try to ram through Maya's appointment as CO. Let them try. I pulled up the corporate bylaws on my screen. They need a 2/3 vote. They don't know I control enough proxies to block anything. When will you reveal yourself? I thought of my father's letter. When they think I'm at my weakest. Saturday morning, I entered Archtech through the loading dock, using old maintenance codes my father had taught me as a child. The building felt different in the pre-dawn darkness. Not the gleaming monument to innovation, but a maze of secrets. Alex's office door opened to my executive override. His computer, more challenging, but the Tholos protocol included keystroke logging. I watched him type his password yesterday. MTNAC forever. Maya Tran and Alex Chen forever. He'd been signing our divorce papers with every login. The files I found made my chest tight. Not just the affair. I could almost understand that. We'd grown apart, buried in work, in separate lives. But this was systematic betrayal. Falsified environmental impact reports. Budget allocations for consulting fees that traced to offshore accounts. And a draft merger agreement with Zhao Industries, dated 2 weeks ago, that would dissolve Archtech as an independent entity. The door clicked open behind me. I spun, heart racing, to find Margaret Haywood silhouetted in the doorway. Security alert on the executive floor, she said calmly, closing the door behind her. I told them I'd check it out. She studied me with sharp eyes. Your mother said you might need help. I showed her what I'd found. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. That bastard, she muttered. I've been playing along with their recruitment, trying to figure out their game. Maya offered me $2 million in Zhao Industries stock options to vote for the merger. Did you take it? Of course I did. At my shocked expression, she smiled grimly. The transaction is fully documented. Evidence of bribery and corporate espionage. I was going to bring it to the SEC, but this is better. You have a plan? I nodded slowly. But I need one more piece. The real architectural plans for the Global Green Project. Alex is presenting modified versions on Monday. I can see the revision history. But the originals are in your personal files, Margaret finished. Clara, those designs are revolutionary. If Zhao Industries gets them, they'll patent them in China before we can protect them. I copied everything onto an encrypted drive. But they won't get the chance. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or the media gets photos from Vegas. You don't want to see them. I almost laughed. They thought I cared about photos of Alex and Maya? They still didn't understand. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about justice. Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, then handed it to me. It's Maxwell. He says it's urgent. Clara, we have a problem. Maxwell's voice was tense. Richard Collins is about to release a statement to the media. He's claiming you've been embezzling funds, that you've had a breakdown, that you're trying to sabotage the company out of spite. Richard Collins, board member, father's supposed friend. Another betrayal, another knife. Let him, I said quietly. In fact, tell him I'll be at the emergency board meeting tomorrow. Tell him the founder's daughter wants to have her say. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, Seattle showing its typical face. I dressed carefully. Not the power suits Alex had always chosen for me, but a simple black dress my father had loved. You look like yourself in that, he'd said once. The boardroom filled slowly. I arrived early, sitting in the corner chair usually reserved for assistants. Let them think I was broken, coming to beg. Alex entered with Maya on his arm, her red power suit a calculated insult. He actually looked surprised to see me, then his face shifted to that concerned expression he'd perfected. Clara, you shouldn't be here. You're clearly emotional. I'm a shareholder, I said mildly. I have a right to attend. Richard Collins smirked from across the table. A minor shareholder. Really, Clara, this is embarrassing. The other board members filed in, some avoiding my eyes, others watching with curiosity. Margaret entered last, giving me the slightest nod. Let's get this over with, Alex said, taking the CEO's chair. We're here to vote on appointing Maya Tran as Chief Operating Officer effective immediately. Before we vote, Margaret said, I believe all board members should be aware of certain documents that have come to light. What documents? Richard snapped. I stood slowly, walked to the presentation screen, and inserted my drive. These documents. The first slide showed the falsified environmental reports. The second, the offshore transactions. The third, the draft merger agreement. By the fourth, showing emails between Maya and her uncle discussing the theft of our solar panel technology, the room had erupted. This is fabricated, Maya shouted. She's having a breakdown. Everyone saw her lose it at the party. Forensic analysis will prove otherwise, I said calmly. But more interesting is this. I clicked to the next slide. A photo of Richard Collins meeting with Lei Zhao last month in Singapore. You've been busy, Richard. His face went white. That was a legitimate business meeting, at which you discussed removing me from any advisory role and fast-tracking the merger once Alex remarried. I clicked again. Audio filled the room. Richard's voice, clearly recorded, discussing share prices and hostile takeover strategies. Alex stood, face flushed. You bugged us? You spied on your own company? My company, I corrected softly. My father's company, which you've been systematically selling to our competitors while sleeping with their niece. You don't have the authority, he began. I clicked one final time. The screen filled with corporate documents, trust agreements, proxy statements. My name highlighted again and again. 78% ownership. The room went silent. I believe, I said into that silence, we need a new vote. All in favor of removing Alex Chen as CEO? The vote was unanimous. Even Richard Collins raising his hand when he realized the game was over. Maya tried to leave, but security, loyal security who remembered my father, waited outside. You can't do this, Alex's voice cried. Alex's voice cracked. 10 years, Clara, doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I said quietly. That's why this hurts. But you made your choice in Vegas 3 years ago. You made it every time you forwarded our designs to Zhao Industries. You made it when you put that ring on her finger while still wearing mine. Margaret stood. I moved to appoint Clara Bennett as interim CEO while we investigate the depth of this corporate espionage. Another unanimous vote. Maya's uncle arrived within an hour with a team of lawyers. But our legal team, Sarah Kingston leading them with 5 years of pent-up fury, was ready. Injunctions filed. Assets frozen. FBI contacted about the international corporate espionage. That night, I stood in my father's office, my office now, as the news broke. Every major outlet led with the story. Architect's daughter reveals corporate conspiracy. Tech giant's secret owner emerges. The woman who stayed silent until it mattered. Maxwell brought me coffee as I watched the coverage. Your father would be proud. He knew, I said softly. Somehow he knew this would happen. He knew you, Maxwell corrected. He knew that when pushed, you wouldn't break. You'd build. My phone rang. Mother. I'm watching the news, she said without preamble. You did it beautifully. That calm delivery, the systematic revelation, pure architecture. Building your case piece by piece until the structure was undeniable. It's not over, I warned. The legal battles will be won. You have the evidence, the authority, and now the narrative. But Clara? This is when you need to be most careful. They'll try to paint you as vindictive. Don't give them ammunition. She was right. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting. Every employee of ArchTech crowded into the main atrium, voices buzzing with uncertainty. I stood before them, no podium, no prepared speech. My father built this company on a simple principle. I began. That sustainable architecture could change the world. For the last 5 years, that vision has been corrupted by greed. It ends now. I outlined the truth. Not the salacious details, but the facts. The attempted theft of intellectual property. The falsified reports that could have damaged our environmental credibility. The merger that would have dissolved everything we'd built. Your jobs are safe, I continued. Your projects will continue. And the innovations you've been developing in secret because you didn't trust current leadership? Bring them to me. It's time to build again. The applause started slowly, then grew thunderous. These people had known my father, had believed in his vision. They'd been waiting, just like the old guard, for someone to believe in again. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Alex's lawyers tried to claim marital assets, but the prenuptial agreement my father had insisted on was ironclad. Maya fled to China, but not before the FBI seized her devices, finding years of stolen data. Richard Collins resigned in disgrace, his assets frozen pending investigation. 3 other board members who'd been compromised quietly stepped down. But it was the divorce that the media fixated on. Alex tried to paint himself as the victim, giving interviews about how I'd changed, become obsessed with control. One particularly nasty tabloid ran the headline, Ice Queen freezes out loving husband. I didn't respond. Instead, I worked. The Global Green Project launched with the original designs. Revolutionary solar panels integrated with living walls, buildings that breathed and generated more energy than they consumed. Orders flooded in from Dubai, Singapore, Copenhagen. 6 weeks after that horrible party, I sat in family court as the judge finalized our divorce. Alex looked diminished, his designer suit unable to hide the weight he'd lost, the gray creeping into his hair. I loved you, he said quietly as we left the courthouse. In the beginning, I really did. I know, I replied. That's what makes this so sad. He reached for my hand, then thought better of it. Maya, she made me feel important, like I'd built something myself, not just married into it. You could have built something, I said. I would have helped you, but you chose to tear down instead. The FBI arrested him 2 days later. The evidence Sarah's team had compiled was overwhelming. Corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy. He was looking at 15 years. Maya fared worse. International warrants, her uncle's company under investigation, her reputation destroyed. The woman who'd worn red to steal my husband was now wearing orange in a federal holding facility. But I found no joy in their downfall. Only a hollow relief that it was over. Mother flew in from Paris for the official CEO installation. The board, newly constituted with people who actually believed in our mission, voted unanimously. "You're not going to hide anymore," she said, adjusting my collar before the ceremony. "No more being the silent daughter, the background wife. You're Clara Bennett, and it's time the world knew exactly what that means." 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of my father's circular office, watching the Seattle sunrise paint Mount Rainier gold. The city sprawled below, dotted with buildings bearing our technology. Living, breathing structures that gave back more than they took. Archtech's value had tripled. We'd gone public with 6 subsidiary companies, each focused on a different aspect of sustainable construction. The media had shifted from calling me the betrayed wife to the green revolution architect. My assistant knocked. "Ms. Bennett, the Tokyo delegation is here." I smoothed my dress, another simple black one, my signature now, and turned to face the future. The meeting was about more than business. Yamamoto Industries wanted a partnership, not an acquisition. They'd developed complementary technology, earthquake-resistant frameworks that could integrate with our energy systems. "We've studied your father's early work," Mr. Yamamoto said through his translator. "But it's your recent innovations that convinced us. The Global Green Project in Dubai? Revolutionary." That night, I stood in my empty penthouse, success echoing in the silence. The investigation was over. Alex was serving a reduced sentence after cooperating. Maya had disappeared after making bail, probably back to China under her uncle's protection. My phone rang, an unknown number. "Clara?" A young woman's voice, nervous. "My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm applying to your leadership academy. I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us we don't have to be silent, that we can build instead of just survive." After she hung up, I walked to the window. The fog was rolling in, but the lights of the city pushed through. Somewhere out there, young women were drawing blueprints, writing code, designing futures. I pulled out a photo from my desk, my father and me at the original Archtech groundbreaking. I was 7, wearing a hard hat too big for my head, grinning as he let me hold the ceremonial shovel. "You were right, Dad," I whispered. Silence wasn't weakness, it was preparation. Tomorrow, I'd fly to Tokyo. Next month, Berlin. Next year, who knew? The world was vast, broken in so many places, waiting for someone to design something better. I'd spent so long as the architect's daughter, the CEO's wife, the woman in the shadows. But that night, as Seattle sparkled below and the fog rolled over the sound, I was finally just Clara, an architect of buildings, of companies, of second chances. The city lights blurred as tears finally came. Not of sadness, but of release. I'd lost a husband, but found a purpose. Lost a life I'd never really wanted, but gained a future I was building myself. In the morning, there would be meetings and mergers, innovations and investigations. But tonight, I stood in my tower of glass and steel, no longer silent, no longer hiding. The fog parted briefly, revealing the stars. Infinite possibilities, infinite designs waiting to be drawn. I smiled and began sketching tomorrow on the window with my finger, tracing dreams in the condensation.